December 4th, 1872. Something strange was drifting across the open Atlantic. Her sails were raised, and the ship was still moving through the water. But no sailor stood at the wheel, and no voice answered. The sailors watching from another vessel immediately knew something was wrong, so a boarding party crossed the water to investigate the silent ship. What they discovered would create one of history's greatest maritime mysteries. Personal belongings remained inside, apparently abandoned exactly where their owners left them. Even an unfinished meal suggested that normal life had stopped suddenly. Yet all 10 people aboard the Mary Celeste had completely disappeared. Only weeks earlier, the Mary Celeste had prepared for a routine voyage. She was a solid 2-masted brigantine, built for difficult Atlantic crossings. Her captain, Benjamin Briggs, was experienced, respected, cautious, and deeply reliable. He was certainly not a man known for making reckless decisions. For this voyage, Briggs brought his wife Sarah and daughter Sophia. 7 experienced crewmen completed the small company that would cross the Atlantic. Below deck, workers loaded roughly 1,700 barrels of industrial alcohol. On November 7th, 1872, the Mary Celeste departed New York. Her destination was Genoa, Italy, on the far side of the Atlantic. Nothing about the departure suggested that these people were sailing toward disaster. For days, the voyage appears to have continued, much like any other. Sarah and little Sophia lived aboard while the crew maintained the ship. Briggs continued recording the ship's position and progress in his log. The Atlantic became difficult, but nothing recorded suggests a catastrophic storm. Then came November 25th, the final known entry in Briggs's log. The entry described navigation, but recorded no mutiny, attack, or panic. Its captain, David Morehouse, personally knew Benjamin Briggs back in New York. On December 4th, his crew suddenly spotted a familiar ship ahead. The Mary Celeste was moving strangely, as though nobody controlled her course. Morehouse recognized Briggs's vessel and became deeply concerned for his friend. They called repeatedly toward the ship, but nobody ever answered them. Morehouse finally ordered several sailors to board her and investigate. The men climbed aboard, uncertain what might be waiting for them. But the first thing they encountered was simply an unnatural silence. No bodies, no injured sailors, no captain, nobody at all. The crew's belongings remained aboard, making a planned disappearance seem unlikely. More strangely, the vessel showed no damage serious enough to explain abandonment. Even unfinished work remained, preserved like a moment suddenly frozen in time. Inside Briggs's cabin, however, several important navigation instruments were missing. His logbook remained, ending 9 days before the ship was discovered. Then the boarding crew noticed perhaps the most important clue, the lifeboat. It was gone, apparently taken by the people who had vanished. Below deck, another possible clue waited among the barrels of alcohol. About 3.5 feet of water had entered the hold. For a wooden vessel, that was concerning, but not necessarily disastrous. 9 cargo barrels were later discovered empty, raising another disturbing possibility. Reports also mentioned suspicious marks and stains. Though their importance was disputed, the central question remained: why abandon a ship that could still sail? If several barrels leaked, dangerous fumes could have accumulated inside the hold. Opening the hatch might then have released a frightening cloud of vapor. Briggs may have feared an explosion and ordered everyone into the lifeboat. They may have intended to remain attached until the danger passed, keeping the lifeboat safely connected to the Mary Celeste. But one broken rope could have turned that precaution into catastrophe, suddenly separating the lifeboat from the ship. The unmanned ship could sail away faster than the small boat followed, leaving the lifeboat dangerously behind. That would leave 10 people helpless in a small boat on open ocean, with the Mary Celeste disappearing into the distance. Investigators also considered a darker explanation. Perhaps the crew had mutinied, turning against Captain Briggs and his authority. But the crew had been considered experienced, trustworthy, and generally reliable men, making mutiny difficult to explain. And convincing physical evidence of a violent struggle was never established, leaving the mutiny theory without strong proof. Another possibility was a sudden giant wave or violent seismic disturbance, powerful enough to frighten everyone aboard. A sudden shock might have convinced Briggs that the vessel was sinking, forcing him to make a desperate decision. In that situation, abandoning ship could have seemed temporarily safer, even though the Mary Celeste was still afloat. Piracy has also been suggested, but that explanation creates another problem. There was little obvious evidence of thieves. Why would pirates leave valuable cargo and personal possessions almost completely untouched if they had taken control? Eventually, the mystery attracted far stranger stories involving monsters and supernatural forces, turning history into folklore. Later writers even added extraordinary ideas that serious historians do not accept, making the mystery seem even stranger. But every new theory helped transform the Mary Celeste into a legend, one that grew with every retelling, and none could prove exactly what happened to those 10 people, leaving the central mystery unresolved. The abandoned Mary Celeste herself survived and was eventually returned to service, sailing again after the mystery. Then, in 1885, her final strange chapter unfolded near Haiti, bringing the Mary Celeste toward her end. Her final owner allegedly grounded her deliberately during an insurance fraud scheme, adding one final mystery to her history. Her final owner allegedly grounded her deliberately during an insurance fraud scheme, adding one final mystery to her history. The once mysterious ghost ship finally ended her own journey in destruction, disappearing in flames and smoke. But Briggs, Sarah, Sophia, and the 7 sailors were never found, leaving their fate unknown forever. No bodies, lifeboat, or definitive trace ever revealed their final fate. Despite years of searching and speculation, alcohol fumes may explain the abandonment, but plausible does not mean proven, and the mystery remains unresolved. After more than 150 years, the Mary Celeste still keeps her secret, leaving one of history's greatest maritime mysteries unsolved.